Hello and welcome to the I3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography here at the School of Visual Arts. I'm Julie Graham. An extra warm welcome again, please, for our new students. I hope that they and all of you will enjoy and learn from this element of the Masters program. Kicking off the season is my third favorite Canadian, Louie Palu.
I fucking love you.
Well, I have a really close friend, and then there's Yusuf Kosh, and then there's Louie. Louie is a documentary photographer and filmmaker who has focused for more than 30 years on social political issues such as war, human rights, and poverty. Louie has joined us tonight from Washington, D.C. His editorial clients include the Virginia Quarterly Review, The Atlantic, NPR, The New York Times, National Geographic, The Washington Post, Bloomberg, Foreign Policy Magazine, and Canada's Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star. Among his utter overachievements, Louie was awarded a fellowship from the Washington-based New America Foundation in 2011 to study the drug war in Mexico and its relationship to the United States of America. His work was selected for the 2012 landmark exhibition War/Photography, Images of Armed Conflict and its Aftermath, through which he and I initially bonded when the exhibition came to the Brooklyn Museum. Other awards include the Hasselblad Masters Award, Alexia Foundation Photography Grant for World Peace and Cultural Understanding, Pulitzer Prize for Crisis Reporting Grant, John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship, and the Grumpy Arnold Newman Prize for New Directions in Photographic Portraiture.
This is all from a dinner conversation, by the way.
Recently, Louie's unique ice block photo installations from his distant early warning project were melting on view at this year's Photoville. And Louie is writing a visual column for 1 year for the Virginia Quarterly Review. Far more highbrow are Louie's assignments along the lines of the tons of metal, heavy metal music cruise that he covered for the Washington Post earlier this year. The man is a mad music buff, so please let's give him a welcome by air guitar.
You know, I challenged her for the most British opening I could get, so that was very good. Thank you. So, really excited to be here. I kind of on the way here on the train, I thought, whoa, I guess everybody reached this point. I'm like 35 years ago, I came here to be an intern to Mary Ellen Mark. 1991, ready? Some flashbacks for some of you and some surprises for others who are younger. My rent was $400 at Washington Square Park. Gunfire was in Manhattan was 3-4 nights a week, and when you went to Alphabet City, it was like, how much am I willing to lose tonight? So, $20 in the sock, $20 in the pocket, and only your driver's license. So when I got mugged, they took my Ontario Canadian. They took my driver's license, and go fake ID, and they just threw it on the sidewalk. I'm like, score! I didn't take my ID. So anyway, it was fun to think back in those times. But I was so low on the totem that I was not assisting Mary Ellen Mark, I was assisting the assistants, which was actually fantastic because they assisted everybody else. Very excited, thank you for coming tonight. I'm just give you a little heads up. I'm going to show a little summary of my career. There's some more photographs in there. And when we look at the photos of the Arctic, there's going to be some dead animals. Now I know New York is a good, tough city, but I wanted to give everybody a warning in case there's some trigger action out there for everybody. So anyway, we can't dim the lights because we're filming. Anyway, so where's my clicker? Okay, here we go. So I grew up in Canada. My parents were Italian immigrants, and I would say, you know, it's incredible how it can take so long for you to understand something that you're in. And I don't know when or how it was, but probably 3-4 years ago, my parents had passed away. They were children in the Second World War in Italy, in an area where the partisans the freedom fighters were fighting the Nazis. So they experienced war, and I grew up with that. And I started looking back a lot of photographs, as we all do, you know, thinking of who you are, where you come from. And I really stuck on this photograph, and that's me. This is my dad would wake me up coming home from hunting with his friend Luciano with 2 dead geese. My father was a child who experienced a lot of things related to the Second World War, and Luciano was a prisoner of war in a Russian prisoner of war camp. And I had no idea that, like, my entire childhood was like, okay, when the secret police are looking for you, this is how you hide in the forest. I thought everybody learns that, and it really didn't like dawn on me till my wife kind of like helped me wake up to like, and it wasn't a trauma because I'm a great survivalist now. How to like hunt and survive off wild animals. Like I just thought, hey, everybody learns this, and it didn't really hit me what they had been really preparing me for was their traumas from the Second World War. And I think that my entire career has been searching to understand where these traumas come from, how do they happen, what the narratives are, and then with a little more formal education, sort of seeking sort of bigger ideas around all these things we're reading about now. I'm kind of just going to laugh now because I don't want everybody to get really bummed out, because when Julie announced me, I'm like, oh man, I'm the bummer lecture. War, poverty, but there is some absurdity to it that we can laugh at. So I love animals. I ride horses. My wife got me into horses. She's from rural Ohio. This is one of the many horses I've made friends with. And when you go to the Arctic, and that'll be the main part of my presentation, if you make a bond with an animal, you kind of learn how to hear them talk to you. And horses were a great source of therapy for me, and they've taught me a lot of things about who I am as a human being. So this is one of my horses. I'm gonna get like emotional because you have this bond with horses. Anyway, I think it's really important to show this, not because, hey, I was there, but it is important to say, hey, I was there. Because a lot of narratives around who did and didn't take photographs these days, what's real and what's not. And I think witnessing and showing, like, that's the great thing about photographers. We go there. We don't just phone someone up, no offense to my writing friends. We actually go there, and hopefully the greatest skill I learned, we all do, is we listen first. We listen a lot. And we try and make pictures, and we struggle. And these are just some of the places that are important to me. Like, it's kind of absurd. This is me in Muammar Gaddafi's tent, the Prime Minister of Canada. Kind of laugh how ridiculous that is now. This is me interviewing coal miners in Ukraine. Hey, that's me coming out of a drug tunnel under the border that the DEA had discovered. That's me with children in Afghanistan. And this is me in the Arctic, and I think this is me with a submarine in the Beaufort Sea, in the Arctic Circle. That's me outside of Greenland. That's in Greenland as well, which is Greenland. Doesn't belong to the United States. So I have to throw a couple of jokes in there, right? And this is me with some Inuit Rangers right here, okay? So in 1991, I had graduated from art school, and I love art schools because that's where all the troublemakers come from. This is where all the punk rock albums get played, and where we do things upside down and backwards, and we go against and we fight the systems, you know. I got back from interning for Merrill and Mark, and it was like exciting New York to back to Toronto, where there's like, 2 magazines. Really hard to find work. And I just thought, well, what am I going to do now? I'm all excited. And so my dad had been working, he was a stonemason working up in northern Ontario. And a lot of people don't know this, but Canada's one of like mining resource capitals of the world. And when I say that, I mean hard rock mining, like metal, not heavy metal, but gold, copper, nickel, uranium. And they're one of the world leaders, and the stock market's one of the biggest stock markets. So it's like your phones, all of this come from places like this. And my dad said, okay, like now what are you gonna photograph? Like I let you go to art school and not get a real job. And that was literally the line. He goes, look, I'm working in this mining town, and you should photograph what's going on there because no one's really photographing what these lives are like. So I went up there. I didn't know anything about photo editing. I went to art school, right? And I spent about 12 years making lots of mistakes. And I felt like for the whole time I was up there, like, man, I don't know what I'm doing, like nonstop disappointment. And what I really realized is I was learning a lot of things on my own, looking at photo books, looking at photo history. And I just didn't know how to get to these places that these other photographers got to. And over those 12 years, that kind of became the blueprint to all the projects I work on. Everything I work on is, I'm always like, never again. 1 year project, nothing longer. And then like 10 years later, I'm like, how did I get into this? But you really, I really like to buy in, and I really want to understand and listen. So I'm going to compress 30 years of all my other work before we get into the Arctic. So I covered the war in Afghanistan for about 5 years. I'm always looking for pictures that are different, that maybe shift your consciousness or you ask a question about. This is a landing zone, and yellow smoke is enemy presence. So like, just trying to go beyond sort of, and I will never degrade news photography because it's just, I like looking at news photography because it informs me, but I'm looking for that fault line that we're not looking at, that blind spot, you know. This is Guantanamo Bay. I've probably been to Guantanamo Bay like 8 times. Most of the prison is demolished. There's only one little bit left. I covered the drug war in Mexico for the New America Foundation. I spent about 3 years on the border. This is like 2011 to 13. You gotta understand, back then I'd be covering 140 murders like every 2 weeks. Like, it's just it's just where I was. That doesn't count the rest of the country. I mean, Juarez had 2,000 murders a year when I was there. So, you know, it was really, really important, I thought, to really understand what was happening there and on the border. I covered January 6th, and I've been covering the U.S. government for about almost 20 years. But on this particular project I'm on now, I've been covering, that's what I thought. I wanted nothing to do with the previous Trump administration. I thought, I'm going to go to the Arctic, as far away as you can go from that. And then I thought impeachment came up, and I thought, okay, this is like unique. There hasn't been one since decades, if not centuries. And I thought, okay, this is like 3-4 months, it'll be over. Now, frickin' 5 years, 2,000 rolls of medium format later, it's still going. But just some unique moments, like these are National Guard handing out guns in front of the Library of Congress after January 6th. Like, just these moments, right? Because outside the headlines, like, what does it say about us? What do we say about it, right? This one, you know, when you work on if you work at the Capitol, it's a really fascinating place. You learn what every statue is, what every room is, you know, and you're always like, okay, one day if this happens and this thing. And so on January 7th, I went in, and the National Guard had come in after the insurrection. And, you know, you don't see soldiers walking around the inside of Capitol with assault rifles, right? So there's that. They're reading a Declaration of Independence beside a statue of the Vice President of the Confederacy. You know, and these are the kinds of things I really like to try. I'll spend months or a year trying to find these photos, right? So this is, I have a column. I just finished part 3. It's going to publish with the Virginia Quarterly Review. It's called Seeing Political. So it'll publish in print and online, and they'll publish every chapter on the Instagram account too. So if you follow me on Instagram, you can follow me. I write like 400 words and their theme. This is the introduction, and they're by themes of media and how we do and don't see politics. So the first one was microphones. So it's all about what microphones do. The next one's going to be about photographers. The next one's going to be about TV and broadcast. And it's going to keep going. So just, you can follow that. So finally, the main event, we get to the Arctic. So, you know, we live in an Arctic country, right? How many people think we live in an Arctic country? Alaska, 4 times the size of Texas. Largest producer of seafood over every other state combined. It's a major food source for this country. It's also closer to Russia than almost all of Europe. It's 22 miles away, okay? So let's kind of go back to the 90s. I get at art school, I get my first magazine assignment, I do this lovely portrait of this geologist, and I go up to Yellowknife, which is like an outpost. It's right on the Arctic Circle. It's the hub to get up in the Arctic, and they found diamonds. So mining, you know, resource extraction, I'm thinking about these things. I'm politically aware enough. And I get up there, and there had been a strike at a gold mine. So this is like 93. There'd been a strike at a gold mine, and this guy, during the strike, in a very violent strike, he planted a bomb in the mine, and it killed nine workers who had crossed the picket line. So let's translate that to now language, because we're going to do this a lot in this lecture. He built an IED, and he blew up some guys over the right to work and mine gold, right? So let's think of that theme, right? And then about a year later, and what I want to help us understand is like to try and see beyond and see things that are coming or that are happening to us that maybe we're not seeing. Because I think we become visually complacent and we're just not seeing a lot, especially with the wars going on right now. This is 1995. Imagine the European countries are fishing off the coast of Canada and destroying the fisheries. Canada sends a warship out, Canada, who like doesn't fight anything, sends a warship out and fires a warning shot at them. Like, they actually fired on the ship and arrested them and brought them in. And they were fighting over fish. Now, all those fish stocks collapsed on the East Coast. Collapsed, all those fisheries. And those fishing boats sailed, literally not long after that, all the way down the Panama Canal, all the way up and started fishing in Alaska. Now Now that's causing a new situation, which I've reported on. So let's think of that theme and let's get right into, how I started this. So I grew up in the Cold War. Anyone remembers the Cold War, studies the Cold War? This is the kind of war when they fire the missiles, it's all over, right? So when I was in Afghanistan, I just started thinking, okay, what am I going to work on next? I'd covered Mexico. I went to Ukraine. I was seeing what was going on there. I went to Ukraine in 2016. I made a film. And I just thought, whatever happened to the distant early warning line? How many people here have heard the distant early warning line? The distant early warning line is now called the North Warning System, and I'll get into that, is a radar line built because of this. Okay, so let's just look at what we got here. This is the North Pole. There's Alaska. See, look, Russia's right there. Okay, look at all of Europe. See how far it is from Russia? We're like front line, okay? And I learned to look at maps like this from an Australian naval guy who looks at the world with Australia in the middle. We all look at it because we're complacent, like, okay, North America's here, here's Africa, and everybody's over here, and Australia's down the corner. But I'm like, if I look at it from here, I'm like, wow, this is kind of a different way of looking at things. Like, look how close we are, right? And then look, this is all ice, but if this melts, then look how close this is. And look at this Russian coastline right here, right? So these are all the bases and the potential bombing routes of atomic weapons, missiles or bombers that would attack North America. And this is the range. So Cold War, 50s, you're like, oh my God, the Russians, the Soviet Union could attack us. Let's build a radar line up here. That's the DO line. And this is the rest of the radars that protect North America. Build a radar line. So if they fire a missile, everybody down here and all the missile silos down here will know beforehand and we could fight back kind of thing, right? And I just thought, is it still going? This whole war ended a long time ago. And it's still, right now, there's people watching the computer, waiting for an imagined war that could happen because the weapons exist, right? So this is where I did all my field work, and I'm an artist. I don't want to show too much of this kind of stuff, but this context is super important when we get to the photographs. So I made maybe 40 trips just on this project, sometimes to places where no one's ever been. I felt like, hey, something's unfolding here. All the different things I've learned and seen, spent time on battlefields, and this is where I did all my field work. The red is just this is Ukraine right here. It's just places I did field work unrelated to this project, but I started off mostly up here in Canada, and then the field work just spread, and then I did a second part of the project, which is where I'm working a lot right now, right on the Russian border in Finland, which used to be a part of Russia. Okay, so, you know what this is? This is my camera's freezing. We can laugh. We're going to laugh a lot tonight, and we're going to be like, whoa, and wow, let's think about that. This is what happens when the shutter gets stuck. You know why? Because I'm holding the camera to my face and my breath is going inside the camera and the condensation's freezing the parts. So I hold my breath a lot when I take photographs. But it's kind of interesting, and it kept telling me there are these little hints nature is the ultimate power. We're so high on ourselves, we have the internet, the cure for cancer. Nature will blow us away, man. It is, and I'm going to show you why it's very powerful. And so Canada has probably the longest Arctic coastline with the archipelago, the islands above, right? And Russia has the longest coastline, right? And most of that part in the middle is ice. It's a permanent ice sheet. Now there's two kinds of ice. There's sea ice, which is the water freezes and it's flat. And then there's glaciers, which are formed on land by fresh water, and as they keep forming, they break off and make icebergs, which is separate. So that's fresh water. The sea ice is salt water. There's other kinds of ice from that, but those are the two main kinds of ice that you're going to sail through or encounter with a boat. So I started going up there, and I didn't really have an idea exactly how I was going to do this. I just thought, let me go up to the distant early warning line. There's 140 radar stations from Alaska across Canada, Greenland, waiting. It's like this lost front line. And I just started thinking, we know the wars that are happening, right? But how do we start seeing the wars that might happen, or maybe they're happening, but we just don't see them anymore because people have developed ways of attacking us that we can't see, okay? I went to some academic conference, I said that, and they said, that's And I can never remember the term because it was like, whoa, that's one of those words. But I went up there and, it was fascinating. Canada has Inuit soldiers. They have a whole unit of Inuit soldiers in all those little communities up north. And if you are going to work in the Arctic, you have to learn Inuit knowledge. You have to learn how to imagine I can build a shelter from blocks of snow. Or, I can learn to look at the lines of the snow and know like a compass where I'm going. And what that taught me right away was the Inuit are the original scientists of the Arctic. They're the original engineers of everything up there. So these are non-Indigenous soldiers learning how to build an igloo. These Canadian Rangers wear these, you'll see them a lot in my photos, they have these red hoods. So you can see them from far away, so you don't get lost. And these, you know what this is a picture of? This is a picture of technology, okay? Because how many people here have a parka or wear a parka? Parka is from an Inuit word. They invented parkas. It means animal skin. They invented a parka. And if you think about that, you're like, I just went up there a lot and listened to elders. I'm like, whoa, I know so little. I'm so lucky to be here and learn. Oops, wrong button. And everything I kept photographing was like survival. Now, just so you know, these photos, the average temperature is -50. And I remember as a child, I went duck hunting with my father. I was 10. And we were in Northern Ontario, somewhere near Lake Huron, and we went to this lake, and we got in the boat. He put his decoys out. We had the dog. We got to the other side. He had his blind where he was going to wait for the ducks. And I was at the water's edge looking at the water, and he goes, "Do you know how cold the water is?" I said, I think I was like stared blankly at him. He grabbed me and pushed me in the water waist deep, and then I sat in the blind all day wet. And he said, "Now you know not to fall in the water." And I thought, well, I was crying, and I told my mother when I got home, and he slept in the spare room. But that really taught me, like, nature is the ultimate power. Like, we can't beat cold. You can't defeat it, right? So everything was about survival trenches, And what I slowly realized is I was not taking pictures of the militarization Arctic, I was taking weather pictures, okay? Because when it comes to climate change, which is why this is unfolding, right? This new interest, the ice is gonna melt, and there's narratives about like oil and undersea mining, all mostly impossible things, or things that are very hard to do. As the ice melts, that we're gonna have this like new economy up north, and that we think that we're destroying the planet. No. The planet will live beyond us. We are destroying the environment the planet gives us to survive. And this is how we got to start thinking existentially about what's happening to the world. Go ahead, destroy that. The planet doesn't care because it's powerful. It's going to keep rotating around the sun with us not on it anymore. This is fishing at night. And so I just started spending a lot of time in -50 standing around. And it was like street photography in -50. And if you think about it, you have to laugh because it's total absurdity. My dad kind of ruined me, right? So this is snowmobiling in a snowstorm, This is another time where I was like had a moment where there was this survival. There's this place called Crystal City. That is noon in January. So that's as bright as it gets, okay? So sometimes there's like 2 months of darkness. And they're learning how to make these snow caves, and you would heat the snow cave with this candle. And there were pilots from like all these NATO European countries, and I'm like, what are Europe? They're thinking way ahead at what's possible, right? So it's like global, right? And these are some of the old distant early warning line radar dishes. So just so for scale, that's a door and there's some stairs. So I don't know, like 70 feet high. It's very like, almost like surreal, dystopian, This is Dead Horse. It's the largest operating onshore oil field in the United States. It's on the North Shore of Alaska. And I kept going up there, and there's like all these plane wrecks. Not because there's more plane wrecks than here, but there is a lot up there. But because it's too expensive to go out on the land somewhere and bring the plane wreck back, especially on some of those islands in Canada. And it just taught me, like, just think of the technology and how much how much effort it goes into making, like, inventing flight, and a storm just takes that and just on the ground, you know? And we're walking on the wreckage of our own ideas of our great inventions. And these are the things, as you're sitting out, and I can laugh, you're like, you're having this moment and you kind of forget it's minus 70 for a second. And you're like, whoa, this is like, you know, I think we had to snowmobile for 4 hours to get to this airplane. I started finding all the plane wrecks all over the place. So I started, the military is like, wow, like, we've been trying to say this is important for a long time. No one's listening. No one cares about up here. No one wants to get deployed up here. And there is a base. I'll tell a funny story about my friend. There is a base up there. A couple of Alaska has massive bases, actually. And a friend of mine was in the Air Force, and he had gone through basic training. And there is, to make it simple, when you finish your basic training, you comply to like your 3 places you want to go deployed through. And he thought, I want to go to Germany. And this was like more 90s, post-Cold War. And so he put in submission and he gets his letter and everybody's like, yay or no, you know, oh, Korea, you know, and he was like, yes, yes, Germany, I'm going to Elmendorf. And someone goes, no, dude, that's a guy's name. That's in Alaska. But he went and he liked it. But anyway, Alaska has a massive counter missile battery. I mean, the size of the military facilities there is huge. And they do a lot of these things. But you know what this is a picture of? Us trying to beat a mountain. Because you can't beat the mountain. This picture is more about the mountain than the guy's parachuting. This is our feet. We're like, we have to get a big airplane, a C-130. We have to train also we could like get on the other side of a mountain and land on the ground, which is pretty incredible to do because I'm not parachuting. But I think I spent 2 years trying to get this. I kept hearing about parachute drops and telling you it's very, very difficult. Signaling. You know what an Inukshuk is? I don't have any photos of it. It's those piles of stone shaped like a man you see from like, yeah, those are like markers. So like, because you're past the tree line. Like if you start snowmobiling up there, you just die. You like run out of gas and it's over. No one's going to find you. The majority of the Arctic has no cell phone service, at least in Canada and Alaska, you know, especially Canada. So like if your plane crashes, like how do you let people know above you, like, hey, I'm down here? They won't see you, right? It's vast. So this is just and just sort of the whole project became this idea about us or me watching this great power. What's power, right? Trying to overcome the weather, trying to be in a part of the planet that the weather's so extreme, it's about more surviving, like the weather will kill you before some other army, right? So, signaling with fire. This is in the tree line. So in North America, most of the Arctic, once you get north, the permafrost roots can't, you know, go down, so there's no trees. Finland has its own unique weather system, so it does have trees up in this Arctic Circle, but yeah, this took like 3 years to get access. This is like some nuclear submarine that hunts Russian submarines. And this is a sea, like a base on a sheet of ice. It was only minus 39 or something. This was warm. So it took, I have to say, I've worked for National Geographic on 3 or 4 projects. About 2 projects. But you know, as I worked on it, I'm like, this whole romantic, you have to travel far. Okay, I'm like, I don't know, it's not happening to me. This was that. I think I flew for 5 days to go there for 3 hours. Yeah, then we ended up on a plane with a rope as a belt, and there's 4 of us with a plywood floor. We landed on the ice. It was that kind of thing. That's a Navy diver pulling up a torpedo. So like weapons testing. And then it also became like training becomes presence. Presence becomes occupation. Occupation becomes force projection, right? Everybody's like, these are just training pictures. I'm like, yeah, but they have real weapons. It's not like that submarine's just hanging out, you know? And it's a nuclear submarine. How many places that get that kind of attention, right? The only reason we know there's no land on the North Pole is because the USS Nautilus sailed under the Arctic sheet ice, a nuclear submarine, in the 50s. So it's pretty fascinating. And then you start learning about, this is where my MFA, by the way, any master's degree students here, my respect. I have gone through it. It's very painful, I know, but it's very rewarding. Where you learn about materials and materiality, and you start thinking politically about where those things came from, right? So these sleds are called komatiks. It's an Inuit invention, another piece of engineering. And there's no screws or nails. They're just wood tied together with rope. So they're flexible and they can move on the sheet ice. So this is the first, and there are all these firsts. It's the first time this military cargo airplane landed in this place called Hall Beach, which is up in the middle of the Canadian Arctic archipelago. And they're unloading these komatiks. But if you studied your history, komatiks were first made of like animal parts, bones, horns, tendons tied together, frozen with ice. You know, they weren't wood. There is no wood. The wood is a colonial material. The wood, you have to, you know, it's learning how to see, right? It's wood came up there because of the Hudson's Bay Company, right? Wood ships started sailing up there when the British started going up there looking for a shortcut through the Northwest Passage. So it's just interesting to see there's like this reverse thing happening where it's like, is this the technology? Because you can't go further with the plane than this. There's nowhere to land. Or is the Inuit technology the technology? Because now nature is the boss. So there's all these things I had to do this too. It's through the ice training. Because you go to a certain point that where you're traveling on the ice, if you fall through, you can fall through. People have fallen through. You have to be able to like get yourself out. You have to, this is the test. You have to take all your clothes off outside. You're wet. This was only minus 36. Take all your clothes off, put dry clothes on, and then warm yourself up. You may even have to help your comrades out of the water, but I was going to a place where you had to be able to do this. So I did it last. There's a video Nat Geo put online about it. It was very painful. You have to like answer questions. So you walk 50 yards. There's 2 divers for safety and you got this rope. You have to just fall in. No like stopping it. You fall in, you go under, you come up, and no matter who you are, you panic. Your breathing goes fast. You have to slow down, and they ask you a question. You have to calmly get up to the ice and have a conversation. And then you have to level yourself out, crawl 10 yards, stand up, no running. If you run, you fail. You have to walk the other 40 yards calmly, take all your clothes off. I mean, putting socks on was like, my hands are like, you know. This is making water because you can't even have drinking water. Where's your drink? It's all frozen. IV, if you get injured, there's a war, like the IV's frozen. You have to keep it like everything you do could be catastrophic. If you lose your glove, you'll lose your hand, frostbite. So I had 2 pairs of gloves. Anyway, these are devices for melting water. This is fermented caribou parts left on the land, like emergency food. So like we're seeing animals, like let me translate this. Power bars, just in case. It's funny, but it's true. And they've been doing that for centuries. They hunt these caribou, bury them on the land in a particular way, mark where it is with a cairn or a nookshuk, and they can go for emergency food if they're stuck out there or if they go very far out. And they're digging it out and pulling it all out. And funny visually how photography can teach you things. This is tunneling to make survival. So it's like, you know, there's all these parallels of what we're trying to do and what they're doing and have been doing for a long time. This is survival training. This is on Baffin Island. I think that's a polar bear after a hunt, which it's legal to hunt polar bears with a tag from your community. And by the way, just so everybody knows here, a polar bear will kill you with maximum violence without hesitation. You can't like play dead or none of these things in TV. It will kill you. Like, and it's 3-4 times the size of a black bear or a brown bear. They're really big. All they do is walk and eat and have babies. That's all. They're like the great white shark on 4 legs. They're beautiful animals. I've seen them very up close, but they are maybe one step below a grizzly bear, but they're you know, very dangerous. So these are seals after a seal hunt, Inuit seal hunt. And let's think about like what we do, right? This is the first oil production. I think it's 40 liters or 40 gallons, 40 liters of oil per seal for making oil lamps. So like We think we make cars and we drill for oil. The Inuit were doing this way before us. While we were in Europe fighting civil wars before we came here. They were inventing stuff here, and not just in some nice climate in the Roman Empire in Italy or France, up in -60. So there is a summer in the Arctic. Those are melted icebergs. That's not sea ice, okay? And this is somewhere just above Hudson's Bay. The tide is low. These are hunting dogs, and those are Arctic char. So, but you know what this is? Giving the dogs the dog food. You go hunt. There's no cans. There's no garbage. This is the incredible part. Like not like we produce. I'll speak for myself. I remember I went hunting. This was in the summer. We were in Rankin Inlet, which is in the northwest shore somewhere in Hudson's Bay. Went hunting with an Inuit hunter. He saw a caribou. He shot it, and then he processed it. Not a word all people like, but he butchered it like at our butcher, right? He chopped it up. And then one of the guys I was with said, "What do you see here?" And I'm like, I knew there was like some great answer to this, but I thought, okay, what's a trick question? He said, "You know what this is? This is a cutting board at the deli in a refrigerator." They don't think of it like that, but that's what we would think of it as if we knew how to look at it like that. Because the ambient temperature, which climate change is going to destroy, does not let the meat go bad. The rock is the cutting board, okay? And that's where the source of the food is, right? I'm going to show some outtakes that I've not published. So this is before. This is a different, I would go on like 10-mile walks with two guys hunting for a caribou, and they would carry it back. This is after. That's that caribou they're processing. So he cut the fur off, made a backpack, put the meat in it, tied it around his head, and then he took the tendons and made straps like a backpack, carried the hind end on his back. Natural resources, right? So that's a caribou head, and this is Arctic char. It's kind of like a salmon. Cubed, salted, hung to dry, and gasoline, right? Colonial material, because they only needed boats they never really used boats till we got there, not these kinds of boats, motorized boats. This is a sushi drying rack. I'm just translating it to our more southern idea of what these things are, right? And I just started seeing more and more sort of like, what are the fault lines we're not seeing? What is this blind spot in our understanding of the world, or not understanding where, and it's true, the Arctic is 100 different things, and it is a place with polar bears, with cute small cubs, and dog sled racing, but that can also make us complacent to not really see the other things going on up there. And that's why I think it's good to have local people reporting on things, and people maybe who are seeing something somewhere else come and say, "Hey, I'm seeing something coming down the road for you," you know, and start understanding what's unfolding geopolitically, right? So firing ranges, this is in Resolute Bay. It can be really shitty sometimes. I think this is like minus 50. Loading an airplane. Then they're just in the middle of nowhere with these dudes walking around with machine guns, and you're like, what's the plan here? You know, and you know, if you think about it and you're around these guys long enough, I could kill you faster by, while you're out on patrol, just destroying your tents, and you'll just freeze to death. So again, they're pictures of weather, right? That's Anuga. I mean, he's one of those Inuit rangers. And that's a poorly built igloo behind him, built by non-indigenous people, which he was teaching. This was an Arctic char head in someone's pocket, and he just pulled it out. He took a cleaver and he started chopping it and making little pieces of just pieces of fish you can put in your mouth, and you just melt in your mouth and it's the oil, like peanut butter, French fries. If you love that stuff up there, you'll love it, because the hotter it burns, the higher in fat, the warmer it makes you, right? And you learn things like, if you drink too much coffee, it's a diuretic. You get dehydrated, you get colder faster, right? So these are all things that play into this, right? So This is a Cliff Bar making area. But it's, you know, and if you look at all my photographs, there's three things happening: landscapes, still lifes, and portraits. And then a combination of the three sometimes. So I think for the students who are making pictorial photographs, those three pillars, if you're on assignment, can never hurt you, you know. And then you just, if you're up there long enough, you just start seeing things, right? So the US is starting to do stuff with the Canadians, and they got the Inuit. Suddenly the Inuit invention is here, but it's carrying gas. And then there's a US flag, you know. So new administration comes in, words are being said about annexing countries. Suddenly all these nice things are changing, right? So, and this is in Alaska. And sometimes you're like, what are these guys doing, man? Like, I mean, they're building a survival shelter, but there is just a certain level of absurdity to it all, right? Like kind of everything unfolding these days. And then as I did all this, I started thinking, well, you know, where has there been war in the Arctic? And some of the earliest warfare in the Arctic were from the Vikings. And I would say a lot of the exploration, you know, like they're going explorers, those were military operations, right? You couldn't do it without the Navy, right? Kind of like a lot of science that happens in the Arctic. Without the military, they can't get there. And I just thought, well, there was a big war fought in Finland in '39. The Soviet Union attacked Finland and annexed land. Kind of reminds you of what's going on in Ukraine right now. And it's kind of similar. Finland was part of Russia. Finland fought a war. They separated. And then in '39, they had the Winter War. And the Soviet Union had lots of tanks, and they attacked them. And Finland conducted this like guerrilla war on skis. And it's studied by every military. It was like a winter war, special war. So I went to Finland. I started spending a lot of time in Finland. This is like 2018, 19, before what's going on now. And I was like, well, the Finns like are attached to Russia. So like they know a lot about Russia. And I just felt like they're buying everybody's tanks. Everybody's selling their tanks because they're like, oh, the Cold War's over. We don't need it. And they're like buying it all. They have the largest artillery range in all of Western Europe. I think the only country that just surpassed them in size of military, I think, is Poland. And I just started seeing these like National Geographic landscapes with like tanks rolling through the river, right? And they're trying to imitate nature, like with the trees. And there's just like this tension point between nature and war, right? And that war is kind of this human condition that has always existed, right? These are scouts who ride motorcycles to attract enemy tanks to their tanks. Everything's about skis. This is some of the first US troops training in Finland after Finland joined NATO, which is a huge moment, right? So as I'm working on this, there was a point where people were like, wow, this is interesting. And a lot of people were like, you're sensationalizing this. You're promoting the military. And I'm like, well, hey man, I'm on the ground and you're not. And I'm just, I have, you know, I think something's changing here, right? And, you know, US Marines, this is in Norway. And if you learn how to look, they still have like tanned backpacks from the desert wars. So lost in the Middle East, they forgot about the North, you know. This is Norway, just having mass in front of a tank. Another colonial thing, you know, depending on who you are. But the Vikings go pretty far back too, right? You know, special camouflage, trying to imitate nature, trying to use nature as part of doing something that's been happening a long time. This is near the Russian border in Finland. That's also in Finland. And Finland, I think in all of Europe, they have the most trees per square kilometer in the world. And it's kind of, they have like a whole wall of trees that you can't invade through along the Russian border. It's quite massive, actually. This is on that firing range. It's called Royarvi. It's the artillery we were talking about in Ukraine. They had been assembling for a long time. They already knew what they thought they might fight against. This is a diver in Norway looking for unexploded bombs from the Second World War. And this never gets talked about a lot in a lot of presentations, and I love it because I love photo editing. This project's been published by a lot of places, but it wouldn't have gotten this big if it wasn't for National Geographic. I got my Guggenheim to get it started. This is my photo editor, Sadie Quarrier, who really the big themes in this project kind of came out of. So this is her editing the magazine. I'm going to show some I think this project's 200,000 photos at this point. The take is, or it's even bigger now. This is fishing through the ice. So here's a take of selects. Okay, I like this one, but then she liked this one. And then neither of them got published, but it's okay. That was the spread. I think it's important to look at this. Like, you can't just look at a photograph as a photograph because it has to go somewhere, right? So that's the opening spread. Here's the caption. That's US troops learning how to ski. This is US troops, this is after learning how to ski. I missed this moment here in the edit. I would, in Nat Geo, it's not like this anymore, but back 7-8 years ago in that last phase where they still did things really big, every time you go on a trip, you take your hard drive, make a little edit. You have to put one caption for the travel trip on everything, and then you send it into Nat Geo, and then they download it, and then she looks at your edit and then goes looking, and you can't delete any photos. It looks everything. And I had missed this one, but. And this is a page spread. So the gutter would be right here. I kind of like the light is echoing down on that. And when you learn these things from photo editors and you collaborate with a really good photo editor, you see this and you're like, oh, okay, next time you go out, and I'm like, you try and build some of these into the photographs. This is online, so more of a size and color temperature sort of aesthetic for the photo edit. This is in a French magazine. Right now I'm working with Bloomberg. Bloomberg has me on a pretty big project. We're supposed to be 3 parts. I think we're at 6, and we're going to another big one again. So these are just some spreads from Bloomberg. And what I started doing was, art is expensive. I would say I had to raise probably $250,000 over 10 years to like pay for a lot of this stuff. Like some of these places, $8,000 to fly to one place. But what I did was I accumulated this massive archive. And if you know how to shoot enough to get enough different kinds of photos, you can offer someone a 1-week trip which they can afford, and then they can license stuff from your archive of unpublished stuff. So I've been doing that a lot. It's worked really well. So people can get like access to this very expensive archive I have for just licensing. So these were all these things that never got, like the actual magazine, I was 5 years, they published 11 photos. In the magazine, maybe 20 online. It was interesting because the director of photography at the time was Sarah Lean, and I remember Sarah, she's very tough, good. She's like that tough sports coach you hear about her in their movies. And I remember she had the glasses, and Sadie's like, okay, this is the final approval or not approval meeting, so just say yes. So she had her glasses, and she was like testing me if I'd be open to be like, yeah, I can do better. I'll go back. I'll redo that, you know, and I had shot a lot. She took her glasses and she was like tapping my computer and talking to me and all this thing. It was like, oh my God, I just bought that. I'm freelance. She's going to break the screen. And I remember she said, Louie, I want intimate and epic. And I'm like, you know, I wrote it down. This is not the original card, but I wrote it down. And then I just started writing these things down. And when I went on these trips, because you're sleep deprived on these assignments, I had a Ziploc bag with all these cards. And I'm in my tent, like in my sleeping bag, like epic and intimate. And it's funny, but it's like when you haven't slept for when you slept 2 hours the night before, the photography powers go from 100% to 15%. You're like, oh wow, I put that to a white balance is not even on right. So, and this theme came out from Sadie, the unknown. And that's really what, if we've ever felt it before, right now in this time is something that's kind of happening to us. So this is part of the Bloomberg series. There's another part after this that I haven't added to the slide yet, and we're about to embark on another big one. Liam Denning is a brilliant writer. But, you know, if anyone came to Photoville this year, I got an MFA in studio art. So I'm like I said earlier, like art students are the troublemakers. And I read this amazing Margaret Atwood intro to this book, and I'll show you the book is in a sec. And she talked about the 2 technologies that went to the Arctic from England when they were looking for the Northwest Passage in the 1800s. So the Franklin expedition, how many people know about the Franklin expedition? Franklin expedition, you know that I think the AMC put out a show called the Terror. It's about that, but it's fictionalized because who knows what happened because no one was there to record it. They were looking for a shortcut to India so they could go to the colony, do the things colonial powers do to the poor countries, and come, instead of going all the way around South America or all the way back around South Africa, shortcut over the North Pole. So they took 2 ships, sailed up there, and they were wood ships. Like, one was called the HMS Erebus, and one was called the HMS Terror. And they sailed up to their former military ships turned into exploration ships. They sailed up there, and then they disappeared. And they looked for them for a long time, 30 expeditions looking for them. Other people died looking for them. And they kind of understood that the ships got caught in the ice. They got crushed. The few survivors that survived at that point, because they had been dying slowly, walked to an island, and then there was some cannibalism, and everybody died. And they only found the ships maybe just over 10 years ago. And I'm reading this Margaret Atwood thing, and I'm really thinking about technology, obviously, as I've been saying. She said the 2 technologies went tinned food, so because they could now last up there for a long time, which they soldered with lead, which was part of the beginning of their downfall. But the other thing, and they found some of those tins, that's why they were able to study it. But the other thing they took was photography, but they never found the camera. So I'm like, in my art world, Louie, I'm thinking, wow, there's probably like some glass plates. No, I think I thought daguerreotypes. I forgot what I thought. And I quickly had a curator correct me in photo history. But I said, they're probably like frozen in ice. And I thought, that would kind of be pretty cool. Like, I'm thinking installation or something. So I go to my mother's house, got a big enough freezer, and I make some prints, and I put them in some trays, and I froze them. And just as I'm putting them in the freezer, my mother walks in with the shopping bag, and she goes, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm freezing some prints, man." So she goes, calls my sister, "Your brother has lost his mind. He's freezing his photographs in my freezer." And once I explained what I was doing, I put them outside, they melted, and they broke, right? These are like sculpture maquettes. And what I really realized I was doing was I was trying to take science and combine it with photojournalism. Melting ice, I'm taking evidence. I'm taking, like, you go to a court and they recreate how blood splatters. I'm recreating how ice melts, real ice, so people can feel it. So I started making these ice blocks, and they put a nice print in it, and it melts and falls apart and breaks. And all these different things, they crack, they blow up. And then I start getting invited to have these installations around. And really all this is it's an art installation, but it really is this, it took me kind of like 35 years to finally, I'm in first year like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make it right away. So 35 years later, kind of had this like really cool idea. This is that book if you want to read it, Frozen in Time. And it kind of helps you understand sort of like our ideas about exploring, and how powerful nature is, right? If you want to read other books, some are super boring academic books, but I like them. I'm like, C-SPAN, turn it up. The Revenge of Geography. This is a great book. If you want to just read a really short book about how it's all going to end with climate change, this just helps you understand it's only about that thick. And then those are 2 more sort of academic books on sort of the history of the Arctic. And, the crazy part about those 2 ships that went up there, the HMS Terror was a mortar boat. And in the War of 1812, it's one of the ships that bombarded Fort McHenry when the Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem. And it sunk at the bottom of the Canadian Arctic. So here's something that could destroy, has this romantic history. It's at the bottom of the Arctic. So anyway, questions?
I'm curious about the submarine raising its little thing there up in, above the ice. Mm-hmm. How does it know how and where it can do that? And what is the depth of the ice? I mean, I don't understand. It's just, it's getting air.
Yeah, so it's a nuclear submarine, so it could stay underwater, under the ice. The nuclear technology in the context of submarines is why they can just stay under the ice forever. They don't run out of fuel. Like originally submarines were diesel. You never have a gasoline. It's like tanks, gasoline lights on fire too easily. So it's a nuclear sub, so it can produce oxygen, and as long as you don't run out of food, the submarine could stay under the ice for a very, very long time. That section you see sticking to the ice is called the coning tower. Obviously, that is one of the biggest submarines ever made. It's not a missile boat. It doesn't fire nuclear missiles. It's a sub hunter. It hunts missile boats. You know, the invention of the missile boats, the boats that carry the nuclear warheads, that is something that the distant early warning line can't detect, because if you've seen the Hunt for Red October, that's a silent submarine that could sail up right offshore, and by the time it's fired the missiles, you didn't have time to react. That's the kind of boat that monitors for those submarines. But also, if you think about a submarine, if it's stealthy, the whole idea of being underwater is stealthy, I could like sneak up on you and listen to things. I could hover over underwater cables and pull information. I mean, I'm speaking very widely and symbolically, but you know, there's a lot of technology we don't know about, but not so much on the American side, but I do worry about the Russian side, because they've had some movies been made about their nuclear submarines that have had accidents. It's like a Chernobyl at sea, you know, if something like that happens. So this kind of, doesn't need to be a war for there to be like casualties, you know. So in terms of where it knows to be, GPS, satellite, I don't know what the technology is, but I don't know there's a certain amount of ice. Has to be a special kind of, not every submarine can break through, it'll break the Conning Tower, but the US and Russia have submarines specifically designed for that. And I think the ice there was 8 feet. It's not very thick. It can be thicker than that, but it's about 8 feet.
Amazing work, by the way. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing with us. My question is, your pictures of the training of the soldiers. Mm-hmm. How much was it? How much free access did you get, and were you subject to auditing, or do you have a chaperone with you? How did you get around those obstacles to get the pictures you wanted, not what they wanted you to have?
I never had a chaperone except to like drive me around so I didn't go over a cliff or get run over by a truck. Or I don't know how to get around. I mean, some of those bases or some of those places, if you don't know where you're going, you could just disappear in the wilderness. So, and also I think that there's a lot of security. You know, I'm not going to be allowed to go into like the secret missile design. I'm being sarcastic for the situation, not with your question. I'm not going to be allowed to see, but these are not things I really want to photograph, to be honest. I had pretty full access. No one's really interested in this, I'll be honest. You know, I'm not interested in photographing the tip of an F-35, the wingtip, and I don't care about that. Like, I'm like the trees with the F-35 back there, but a lot of the stuff that maybe they don't want me to see, that's secret, I'm not really interested in photographing that, to be honest. Guys surviving in the water. And a lot of times, there are things I requested to go photograph. I don't get access because they're like, hey, the submarine's too secret. You're not allowed inside the submarine. There's like, you know, this is like national security, nuclear weapons, that kind of thing. You could photograph something and show it to the Russians. So to be honest, there's nothing in the submarine I'm really interested in photographing. I had pretty free access. And I would also say this, I know there's been a lot of conversations, and there should be conversations around like embedding in Afghanistan and Iraq and it being controlled. Well, there's no such thing as embedding anymore. And we have no idea what our military is doing in Syria or wherever else it is, because embedding is over. So in some ways, I just feel like even though like Guantanamo Bay, that you have someone like with you all the time. At the end of the day, you like load your memory cards in their computer and they like delete certain photos, mostly around like, you can't see that lock or the tower distance from the shore, like prison stuff. Most of the stuff I got to keep. But that's the great thing about photographers. We're very creative. We can create metaphors that say a lot that they may not care about, but say something bigger than they're thinking literally, right? It's about that getting past the complacency of seeing. And I think when it comes to the Arctic, I think that the government and the military is truly worried about like what's unfolding there. Like, you know, I have to say, like, if we see what's unfolding in Ukraine, Russia's totally thinking about the Arctic. Now, I'm being an independent journalist when I say that, but they're not like, the Arctic, we don't care about that land, Norway. They're totally thinking about that. You know, they're thinking about how much resources is left and how much do we need. And there's another country that starts with C that's thinking that too, right? And suddenly they're like a near Arctic nation. These are actual terms being put out there, or a near Arctic nation, or, you know, I think even Scotland. I mean, there's lots of countries that are saying, like, because we're close, that means we should be going up there too. You know, maybe we could have us share that. Or maybe I'll just invest in some mining company in Greenland. You know, China tried doing this. Or buy some mining company in Canada or some land, and then we'll build a compound, and then that's a private company, and then maybe we'll bring in some other things, and we'll base them there too, right? Kind of like the spy balloon. You know, if we think about, let's just look at some narratives. Spy balloon, yeah, that's a weather balloon with the size of a bus. Cutting of cables, Finland, okay, bombing of the pipeline, there's lots of sabotage going on along Finland, Norway, GPS jamming, election interference. This is war. We just don't think of it like a shooting war. And I think that for me, earlier this year, the moment where I didn't think it was going to happen this fast is the bombers that Russia's using to attack Ukraine. They had to move far away because Ukraine was flying drones and destroying them. And they moved them to that base in the map at the beginning of my presentation, like the secret Arctic base, because they're too far away. Well, Ukraine bombed those bases. So there's been bombings in the Arctic between two countries fighting. And that's 140 kilometers away from the Finnish border where I took my photographs. So like, war is happening there. It's just, we're not seeing it like we learn about World War II and World War I. So in terms of that, I never really had an issue.
Thanks so much. I understand you live in DC, is that correct?
Yeah, almost 20 years.
Can you talk a little bit about what's happening there,
Okay.
like militarily, with like, you know, the local, you know, situation? Because all this is amazing,
Yeah.
but I'm really very, very
Sure.
interested in your perspective on DC
Sure.
specifically.
It's okay, everyone. It's fine art next week. Don't worry.
Everybody's gonna have the bar after this. Okay, so look, I always joke if I meet people for the first time, or if it's my friends. Usually when I show up, something's going wrong. Like there's a coup, or this question, like something's not happening, or I'm seeing something maybe coming, or there's a simmering thing like I have a project on Ireland I want to keep working on, sort of the legacy of that conflict, right? So what's going on in DC right now? Well, I've been pretty full-time focused on the government. And when I say the government, that includes like protests, any kind of political activity. But I cover the White House. I cover Capitol Hill a lot. Like I'm accredited. I have a security clearance to go to those places to do. And that's super limited access. Like the White House is extra limited. But I get to be close and I get to listen. I get to see subtle details or tone because I'm like this far from the president, It's a different experience. And you see the before and the after that you see on the TV. And I would say that a lot of the ways that I'm photographing is about seeing and not seeing, I mean, I'm going to pose a question and I'll keep going. I'll get to your answer. So let's think of it like this. When you see a press conference, right, of Senator A and B from either party at different times talking, right, and it's lit by TV, and the government said, this is where you can set up the press conference. This is what you can do. This is where you can stand. And then you film them and they come out and they usually have a piece of paper behind their back because it's their notes or they're reading off something. And then the photographers photograph that scene with the TV lighting in the scene approved by the government. Is that real? Or is that just the settings where you agree, hey, I'm going to give a press conference and that's a record of a moment? But which is it? Is it a bit of both? Is it a little bit of more? Is it a little bit of the other? It all depends on your perspective, right? But if you're there over and over and over again, it starts becoming like, hey, if you don't follow these rules, then I'm not giving you access anymore. Oh, no, I need my access because we want to keep covering the White House, right? Or we want to keep covering this. And this applies to all the 5 presidents I've covered, because probably the most restrictive president of all for access for photography was Obama. Very, very challenging, So I would say this, when we get to what's happening right now, the first time I saw the National Guard in DC was kind of, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, and then January 6th. I was there after January 6th, and after January 6th, I saw them there as well. And I've been around a lot of security forces. And some of those protests in DC, I don't know about here, we had like riot squads from federal penitentiaries. Like they just ran out of police. They just started bringing people from all over the place. And I was at the press conference when it got announced, like we're taking over DC. And first, I just want to establish like DC's a federal district. That means that we don't have no Senate or House representation, not elected, that is. And that means they can do things that they can't really do here. But I would say that when I went to the Republican National Convention, all their platform was laid out. And one of the big ones was mass deportations. And that's one of the big missions of this government. And that's what they said they're going to do. I'm just laying out the facts. I don't agree with how this is being done in any way. But I would also contend, like, where is the immigration reform that, would have prevented this? But what's really happening in DC is, for me, minus the ICE part of this, it's a photo op. It's a photo op, and a lot of the photographs of the military walking around, if I took a bag of money and ran around, and they're all around like Lincoln Monument, and I was throwing money where, please mug me, I couldn't get mugged. Okay? Now they are in Union Station, and they are in a couple other places, but I would say I've lived in DC a long time. I mean, it's like any sort of grown up American city. It has nice parts. It has some parts where the government has failed the people that live there because of economics. And I would say DC has some places that need help. And I would say that the local government, and it's my opinion, and the police weren't doing a great job. And I'm not saying this fixed it. This gets taken advantage of by someone who wants to seize more power. Like, look, you're not doing a good job. But it's a complex situation. I had a magazine call me to do a story, and they wanted me to just go take pictures of the soldiers walking around. And we couldn't come to an agreement of what I was going to do. And I just thought, well, where was everybody with the coverage or this security operation for all the young black men that were killed before this? Because DC, I don't know, we're like at 150 murders a year. Most of them young black men, unfortunately. And I just think that the conversation is too much around this soldiers. I could drive, I go looking for checkpoints. I mean, it's not like ICE does a press release, we're doing a bust over here. So you got like, I could drive around the city for hours all day and not see a single soldier, or I see the odd cop car, which is normal. And sometimes you find those checkpoints. And I would say those checkpoints, I guess for DC, for people in DC, it's like, oh my God, it's a checkpoint. You have to show your papers. I know, I grew up in Toronto. They have like DUI checkpoints where they set up, and then you come by and they say, hey, do you have a drink tonight? And outside of the ICE, the immigration part of this, a lot of this other stuff, for me, I just think we gotta be really careful taking photos of people getting arrested at checkpoints, showing their faces. We have no idea what they were arrested for. We don't know what's going on. And I would say that what I would be thinking about is, like, I remember those two protests after the election in 2020 when like 700 Proud Boys came to my city and we're marching around and we're on the mall doing these practice marches, and I'm like, it feels like Spartacus, like moving around, and I thought it's kind of strange. And then January 6th, I'm like, oh, they're like preparing. And I'm like, is this like, if in the next, this is what I would be thinking about. If in the next election someone doesn't like the result, like, is this the practice? I don't know. Maybe it's not. I hope it's not. But I'm not worried about soldiers walking around. Like they're not. I mean, there have been National Guard in Penn Station here for how long since 9/11? Since 9/11. So I just think DC's been short 600 to 800 cops. Like we're supposed to have 4,000. They have a recruiting problem for a long time. I do think the mask thing is a mistake. This is being all done wrong. DC could use some help with its crime. Most cities could, but I just think this is the wrong way. And a lot of it is a photo op, so we're not really paying attention to what they're doing to our constitutional rights, especially with what ICE and some federal forces are doing. And I think a lot of what they're doing, we're not even seeing the core of what they're doing. We're just seeing the little surface things. So I would say in DC, you could come to DC and maybe see a soldier if you go around some of the federal parks, or you wouldn't see them at all. Maybe the train station. I was in the train station, I saw nothing today. There's no Humvee in front of it. That's all a photo op. It's all a photo op. It's a projection of power. And if you think about Like, let's just think of coverage of like Republican conventions and stuff. Everything's so photographable, right? It's like, who has ever run for president and turned a news photo of an attempted assassination into an image for a successful, run for president? Everything is a photo op. So I think we got to really learn to be aware of what it symbolizes, like what I'm thinking you're suggesting, which is true. Like, what else could this be? But to not be fooled by looking at photos and going like, because he wants us to get mad. He has the control. This is all revenge, Like, now he can deploy the National Guard. Everybody January 6th are patriots. All the whole pandemic thing, goodbye, RFK. Like, all of this is counter narratives to say, I'm in charge. That's what this is. And so I would say I would really pay attention to the Constitution, the breaking of laws, and sort of subverting the Constitution for this sort of immigration policy, which has not been made law. There's no immigration reform. I mean, it's just someone saying, I'm going to do this. So, I hope that kind of, it's a complex situation, right?
I just wanted to get a vibe because
Yeah.
I feel like this is going to be rolling out in other cities too, and it's just kind of like DC seems to be the first
DC is the peak
city
of
that's
this.
experiencing
It's
this,
the
and also the recruitment of ICE is like now like TV ads and radio ads, and it's just going to
Yeah.
get worse and worse and worse. And I think that oftentimes the military isn't really on board for the assignments that they're being
Now,
given.
let's understand. It's National Guard. It's not like active duty. So National Guard is the military. It's volunteer. National Guard belongs to the state. So the president can only get that National Guard, other than DC's, if the governor sends it. It belongs to the governor. So, but the active duty military, like, there's no like 101st Airborne, that's not there. So this is all National Guard. So it's the domestic military, not the active duty military. I know these are all splitting hairs, but DC, he can take home rule away. He can declare emergency. And this is what I think, like, think in the history of the world of people declaring emergencies, like someone, burns the Reichstag and then have to blame somebody and take over, right? So I'm just saying, like, I think I'd be looking beyond, I'd be thinking like bigger picture at the next election if someone doesn't like the result.
Okay, we got more questions, so let's keep moving, Phil.
Hi, Louie. I want to pull you back to your Arctic adventure there. When you go on some of your earlier pieces, you were shooting medium format, and the material you're shooting in the Arctic, are you shooting primarily digital? Are you using 2 1/4 medium format and or 30? What are you using, and how many
It's all color
cameras?
digital. It's all color digital.
How many cameras do you have to take?
So I'll just first say I use medium format a lot. I like film. I like that it's slow. I like that it's square. I like that it's clunky and it slows down. Looking how I look at politics. It also is just different. I think we should always try and do different stuff. But I like color and I like 35 millimeter format and I like digital cameras. I use, for the Arctic, I have 2 of every lens. I have to because I go to places where stuff breaks. And I carry 3 camera bodies with me.
What system?
Oh, Nikon D800s.
How do you stop them freezing?
Oh, I have 10 batteries in my parka.
So they really keep warm?
Yeah, I have a Canada Goose, and that's what Canada Goose was designed for, where I go. So, and it's the top of the line. It's expensive, but I have 10 batteries, and sometimes the cameras just freeze. The battery, it's really cold.
Do they ever do they make any kind of miniature jackets for
No,
the camera?
that doesn't work.
Don't laugh, I have one actually.
No,
I mean,
I try and if I'm going in a snowmobile, I'll put them in my parka. If you have a snowmobile accident, which I've had, and you fall and you land on your camera, which I did, you break your ribs. So like there's all these trade-offs, right? So I have a glove system. So I have you want mittens to keep your hands warm, but when you work the cameras, you want gloves with fingers. So I have a series of wool gloves. They're really cheap. The Air Force makes them. They're size 1 through 5. And I have the size that fits me, and I have a size bigger, and I have 3. And then I have those heat things in my big mittens. There's these big gloves with a string, so you don't lose your gloves. And that's when I ride the snowmobile, I use those, but I can warm my hands back up. So I'll feel my hands like starting to, I can't feel them. I'll keep taking photos so I almost can't feel them, then I'll warm them up. It's kind of, I know how far I can go. And then I warm them back up, then I keep taking pictures. And I have to hold my breath or I fog the whole back and I can't see what I'm, so live view, forget it, your camera's gonna die. It's just, the battery will die too fast. So it's all just, I think I have a D810. I think one camera died. And almost the whole project's a 28 and a 50. Prime lenses, that's it. I've used a few other lenses here and there for the project, but I think the parachutes was a 300 because I had to compress them. Otherwise, they look like they were miles apart. But otherwise, the entire project's a 50 and a 28.
Great.
Nice and simple.
Good.
Hi. Also back to the Arctic. When you were talking about the different books related to some of the Arctic science and expeditions, have you read On Trails? I don't know the author, but I'm currently reading it. It's about this guy that's going up. He's doing geological research, but it's all about the native, like you were talking about the early engineering, how when the expeditions lost their way, they all perished because they didn't have any of the survival. And he talks about the ancient trails of like the original organisms. It just really resonated in your work. So I was curious if you had heard of that book and, some of that philosophy I feel like you were
That
echoing.
might be a little further south than where I was because a lot of places where I went, I'm standing on frozen ice. There's no trail. But
No, I mean trail. He's talking about like trails in the snow or on the permafrost, like not nature trails, but like ancient organisms, like their
when
traces.
we're done, tell me. I'll write it down.
Yeah. I was just curious because there's so many of the themes he
see
talks about that resonate.
You know what I would say is also, there's 600 in Canada alone, indigenous bands and tribes or communities in Canada. Like when I say engineers, there's the Arctic, but then there's like all these other things like making canoes and, a lot of the tribes in Canada are canoe tribes. There's no horses. Horses are actually another colonial, other than some of the horses they contend came across the bridge from Russia, the Mongolian, the Appaloosa, but horses, that was brought by the Spanish.
With all of this, what still surprises you?
Wow. Every day, I go on my browser and I type in Leafs, and I wonder why my hockey team has not won the Stanley Cup since 1967. Every day, I'm like, who did they draft? I'm obsessed. I'm like, Jesus, like, come on, start the podcast. Training camps in 2 weeks, man. In all seriousness, I get surprised a lot, and I'll tell you that I think that the greatest tool that a photographer can have is listening. I'm very, very satisfied and happy, and I feel really good about some of the images I made because of what they talk about. And it's a time where it's a place we really need. There should be 30 photographers, 100 photographers. That's a place where the climate change is working to warm it 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. And you understand, like the ice sheet up there, it's like all the water, it's just simplified. So please, scientists, give me a break here. So the water, like the currents go under the ice, cools off like an air conditioner, comes back down. Well, when the ice goes, So I think what I like to always be surprised by is I horseback ride every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, is how we think like we're civilized, animals. It's so, if you learn how to like listen to them, they do talk to you. I know we have movies where they actually talk like cartoons. I wish my horse could talk. But no, if you learn like, I remember I was in a boat with one Inuit soldier And we were in a boat, and he goes, "Look, Nanook." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Nanook, that's polar bear." And we looked, and it was like swimming, like out in the water. We were way up above Hudson's Bay. It was summer. And he pulled up beside it, and it was big. I mean, you have to understand, a polar bear is like 4 to 5 times the size. It's gigantic. And its hind end is like that wide. You know, it's huge. And it was swimming, and it just sounded like an engine, and he was talking to it. And I thought, wow, that is amazing. And I just think that we need to constantly remind ourselves to understand how amazing nature is. Like, I like my phone because I only get back to my friend's place tonight with my phone. But we think that that's something we're always looking at, but we stop looking at the trees and the birds. And I think those are way more amazing creations than all the stuff we get focused on so much. So I think nature keeps surprising me. I love.
All right, last question. Yes.
Last question, oh boy. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you for curating, Julie. I'm one of the students in the MPS program. And so at the very beginning, you were talking about how when you first started, you were kind of figuring out like, wow, how do I do all the things that the people I look up to and admire do, and I'm making mistakes, and how do I go about this? And then you kind of skip to 35 years later. Can you kind of summarize how'd you do that?
Well, I'll tell you, I got my master's degree only like a few years ago. I always wanted to get it, and I started working, and it's expensive, and then you get in a relationship or you're partying. No, you don't party in New York. No, but life happens, right? And then you're like, oh, I still want to get it. And then I just it was always there, but it became more and more unattainable. And then the opportunity came up for me to get it. And I love books. I just unpacked. We bought a place finally, and I unpacked, and I started looking. I'm like, oh, I missed you so much, books. You look at all these books, and you just start looking at, Lee Miller or Robert Capa or whoever, even younger contemporary photographers, how people do things and how you create. And talking about being surprised, I always thought music is vibrating air. And if you think of it like that, it's like, oh, like my song is vibrating air. It's kind of like very abstract, but very technically scientific. And I just thought, you have to constantly be doing it. Like, not where you're having a breakdown. I don't believe in there's these workshops where people have all-nighters and you're going to have a breakdown in this workshop. I don't believe in that. That teaches abusive work practices. I don't, there are workshops still like that, where you're going to cry in this. I'm like, why should they? No one should be crying. But I did find books like In Flagrante by Chris Killip. Find something you really love. Find someone, even if it's not them. If you could meet them personally, great. I got to hang out with Mariel and Mark. But find that book that is talking to you. Or it's one photograph, pin it up on the wall. And, I think, like things like having a cupboard and putting your photos on it and just look and just take some time to think a lot, right? Take some time to do, but make things and get off the computer. And now I'm going to reveal a secret. Go to CVS and make some editing prints. Make those little 4x6 prints and just make a little group of other artists who are trying to seek what you're seeking, and have exercises that are fun. And if I'm being safe here, if you're over 20, see in Canada, you have to be 19 to drink. Here it's like 21. And if you're over 21, not you, but everybody here, if you're over 21, you get a 6-pack of beer and say, hey, let's have an editing party tonight, and make it fun. So it's not just hard work, make it fun. And then, if I think of when we mentioned Arnold Newman, rip some prints up and tape them together and light them on fire. Not in your house, please. But, I always loved the Dada period, not so much always for the work they made, but the experimentation and the discovery, and make it exciting, If you're not having fun, then find ways to have fun. Because if you have fun, you want to do it more and more, and make a community of people that want to go on that journey with you. Because it's always more fun if you're not the lonely artist playing like Bauhaus in the background of the Smiths. I'm revealing parts of my past here. No, but in all seriousness, like, you know, I have a stack of sketchbooks, even from New York, where you write notes, it's a diary, and just let it all pour out, and go to as many lectures and openings, and make it so you really enjoy it, you know. And don't ever let anyone tell you you can't be who you want to be. Don't let anybody say, you're never going to make it. I mean, in my mind, I was playing Henry Rollins' Black Flag when they said that, but I was like, no one's laughing, like, oh, old man reference. So and all joking aside, it's like, I think that everybody in this room who wants to be something can be that, or it's not that, it's a version of that you have not found yet that might be even better of what you're imagining. And I think it's about finding what you enjoy. And I think that's really easy for me to say now because I did struggle a lot. But, you know, just build your own community if you don't have one. And if you're in an MFA program, you have all these other people who are like, you're all there like, I want to do that. So, but experiment, make experimental projects together. Go to a movie screening or go do fun stuff, you know. I think, what did we do? And I was lucky. I went to a high school that had the special art program. We were like doing life drawing when I was 15. It was really cool. Obviously, the school board in Toronto canceled that because it's not real school. But you know, I think we used to have contests where like, okay, the creative, you have to build something, you have to put an egg in, and you have to drop it from the second floor of the house without the egg breaking. You know, and there were parachutes, and I'm not kidding, I froze mine in ice and I dropped it. And they said it didn't roll free, and I'm like, it's gonna melt in an hour. But you know, make it fun and really have a sketchbook and make stuff. I think I can reveal this now. I think when I had my FA, I was kind of coming to terms with, my name's not Louie, it's Louie Gino. When I was in kindergarten or grade 1, a teacher said you should have a Canadian name and changed my Italian immigrant name to Louie, which, you know, and Julie gets this, it's like this, you know, in Canada, at least in England, the Queen's their leader. In Canada, it's like, you're not even from here, man. So after I was forced to go to a Catholic boys' school, I was like, which didn't work out well. I think I got mad. I was like, you know, you changed my name, all these like hidden power structures. And so I made a series of postcards and I was mailing them anonymously to Buckingham Palace, these like rebellious punk rock images, secretly mailing them to Buckingham Palace. But you know, I think like finding ideas like that, outlets where it's fun. I think it's what you're really looking for now is process. Don't think too much always about the finished thing. Think about you coming here and being able to leave here and being like, hey, I know how to do that now, and I'm going to keep making these things, and it'll get better and better and better and better. So I don't know if that helps, but.
That was wonderful. It was so helpful.
Super.